Well, that's not the case. There are things that you guys are entitled to get, and there's things that under law we are not allowed to give out.
Well, you have to. Well, under law, you're not allowed to give full.
You got a nice little streaming setup and everything. We talked about your mic yesterday and how I'm jealous that you have that mic and I don't.
Yeah, here's the SM7B.
Beautiful.
Well, it's really good. It's good for, recording everything. So
yeah.
I always keep one around in the studio.
Cool. So we'll be hearing your sort of guitar through that mic, sort of through like the ambient sound of the room. That'll be great. And you've got a nice camera too. You're a real boy. You're a real streaming boy.
I got into cameras at the beginning of, I'm sure like a lot of us, at home creatives trying to figure out how to do this, how to exist, how to be present.
Yeah.
So, started learning about cameras and such.
Yeah. Wow. DSLR over there?
Yeah, it's a Sony A6400.
Yeah. It's a good one, right?
Some LEDs.
Yeah. Okay. Good lights too. I was wondering, it looks really natural in there. I got to up my light game. It's a little unnatural, but I sort of like it.
There's a lot of natural light in here. That's nice.
Okay. All right. Looks great, dude. Yo, thank you so much for being with me. Wanted to reach out to a lot of my leftist and left adjacent friends, new and old, and I would describe you as a new friend. I was hanging out on Ico Rules' stream just a few weeks back, and if that, maybe less. And I was able to get to know you a little bit and hear you noodling in the background. That looks like a Telecaster. Is that right?
Yeah, this is my my ride or die. Had this thing forever. This thing's been around the world. It's my Carecaster. So you can see the Care Bear sticker or the Mango Caster.
Mm-hmm. The question is, does that machine kill fascists?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Good to be with you today. And thanks again for joining me and allowing me to get to know you and share you with my audience here live. And also we'll put this up either on Twitch and or Patreon. So thank you again. Really appreciate the chance to get to know you here, Justin. I think you may have the idea of what's going to happen here, but what I'd love to do is be able to give you the opportunity to give yourself a quick intro and let folks know, what you're up to now, in terms of maybe some projects or whatever hobbies or whatever you're wanting to talk with me about. Anything you're up to, go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first, thanks a lot for doing this. I think this is really sweet, and
hey.
This is the first, I'm new to Twitch. I've been on Twitch now for, I think, like a month and a half, but like real casual. Mm-hmm. I've been doing like music lessons and stuff like that.
Okay.
But nothing major. So this is the first sort of like, I guess, expose or, thing that I've been on, because I don't want to do like panels and things like that. So I think you're doing a really wonderful thing for the community and highlighting leftist streamers and just people, what we're doing and different creatives and stuff like that. Right now, the big thing is... So before the lockdown, before the pandemic, I made most of my living as a live performer, as an entertainer. So like I play music out for a living, and that's starting to kind of like tidal wave back in a little bit. So starting like June, July, there's going to be a lot of shows happening, presumably if everything goes right. So there's a lot of anxiety and like excitement at the same time circulating around that, and that's kind of where my head's been at. That combined with like how I want to combine what I've been doing online using mediums like Twitch to sort of like, because being out of the live performing space for a year has sort of shifted my headspace about like what's important about that, what my goals ought to be surrounded around that. So it's like now I kind of want to embrace these different mediums, and also it gave me time to think and reflect, because my background is actually not in performance. I went to school for philosophy and aesthetics, art history, and pedagogy education. So now I'm kind of coming full circle back around to how ways I can combine the things I now sort of know about music and performance. We're talking about just the general aesthetics of politics, the aesthetics of education, which is something that's really important to me. So that's something that I hope to kind of do with the stream moving forward when I get people hanging out and chatting.
That's fantastic. I relate on some levels, but only that it seems as though we've crisscrossed. I went to school for music, and I'm not doing it anymore.
Yeah, I remember you talking, because I know you're a performer as well. So so you know the deal.
Yeah, it's hard out there. You got to grind. You got to earn it. So I only have much respect for you. I've heard you noodle a little bit, so I know you got the goods. Hey, let's go ahead and try to take this to the next step here, where we maybe ask you a little bit about your leftward bound pathway. On the channel, we've generally defined leftism as anti-capitalist. Increasingly so, we're defining it as also intersectional, and the channel is definitely an exploration for me of my newfound leftism and me also trying to find a way to fit into the community and amplify important voices and get to know other new leftist voices and just try to do the good work here. So can you go ahead and take a moment, explain a little bit about your leftward path? Feel free to let us know, who inspired you along the way, how you got to the place where you are now. If you do consider yourself leftist or not, that's fine too.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Yeah, no, I suppose like under the umbrella of ideas, I would consider myself a leftist. Okay. But it's difficult when we're using this terminology. Can often be like bifurcating, or it could sort of diminish the impact of what we're trying to say. Mm-hmm. I mean, I like to say that I'm pro like human beings. So it's like I want people. I think it's a right to have health, housing, food security, safety, healthcare, medical, like these are things that just should be the standard of living, because without which we sort of become mechanized into this system to just produce towards no particular end that's beneficial towards any of us. My journey towards leftism, or just like this sphere, I think is kind of interesting because I can pinpoint it in I guess 3 broad areas related to how I grew up. So the main one is I grew up very poor. So things like food security, homelessness, like different aspects of the failed American system and failed social welfare like programs. These are things that have directly affected me growing up and just my life as a kid. So it's like we grew up with not having access to food all the time, and food stamps and things like that. So it's like these failed aspects of capitalism were always like really intimate to my experience as a person growing up. So even as a child, even though like I didn't think of it in terms of like capitalism is ruining my life, I always knew that these systems of inequality were having a negative impact on growing up. I mean, even like where I grew up, we had a giant school system. I think like my graduating class was like 850, or like between 850 and 900, which is pretty big. And so I grew up so it encompassed really poor neighborhoods and more affluent neighborhoods. So it was something that was just always just subconsciously like at the back of my head, and something I was always self-aware of. The second thing is that I'm first generation Cuban. Okay. So my family left Cuba during the revolution. So they actually fled, a quote unquote failed communist revolution, right? I mean, it's a point of contention, but that was something that was, just always an aspect of my household. And an interesting aspect of Cuban Americans, particularly when my family came in the 70s, late 70s, is a lot of them are Republican, right? And like we see this with like Ted Cruz, and I think sometimes it seems kind of like oxymoronic or counterintuitive, and it is, because it relates to, I think, when I was growing up, like my grandparents, because I was sort of raised half and half between my grandparents and my mom, but my grandparents, they saw it as they left a government, like communism, they saw it as this terrible thing. Because they associated it with this failed revolution. They associated it with like the trauma of having to leave their immediate family and all this. So when they came to America, they were almost like vehemently libertarian. you know, in there, it was almost like this "don't tread on me" sort of thing was a big part of their ideology. So growing up, I always had this sort of mixed message. Like, we were poor, yet the household was Republican supporting. My mom wasn't, you know, my mom was kind of like a anarchist, really. But so it was this point of like, there's this strange kind of like antagonism that was always existing. And then the third thing that sort of gives me a relationship to leftism and socialism in America is my stepdad is a union guy. But he was like a corrupt New York union guy. So he always like voted like Democrat, and he was always pro-union. And his stepdad was actually a union organizer in New York, like a real. You ever watch the show The Wire, Dan?
It's such a good series. I'm looking forward to watching that again someday. Me and my partner keep putting it off.
Everyone needs to watch it. But you know, season 2, right? The sabaccas. Like the death of the American Dream Union thing. That was my stepdad growing up.
Okay. Yeah.
So growing up, we were living in quote unquote poverty in the sense that we were poor. And then I had my grandparents who fled like this communist country and were pro-Republican because they were holding the ideology of the revolution. And communism, they were making it synonymous. And then I had my stepdad, who was this union guy. So I always had this strange relationship to what these sorts of things meant. So that was sort of my foundation into thinking about this. But, you know, I think as a lot of people, and I assume we're kind of close to in age probably, but like, you know, growing up, I was still kind of like tone deaf to politics. So I remember, you know, the first election I voted in was Obama when I was 19, and that was like a super exciting thing. And but I didn't know anything about my local politics. You know, it really wasn't until like, I mean, I think now it's this really wonderful kind of revolution of communication that we have, you know, figures like, I mean, I think Bernie Sanders exists as this like catalyst for a lot of people, but then you have like figures like AOC, et cetera. And now you get into Twitch and we can really kind of examine the locality of politics and what people are doing, and we can try to be more active. But yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, long story short, that's kind of like how I got to thinking about that. But now being on Twitch and just the world we live in which it's so much more meaningful, so much more impactful to question and constantly interrogate yourself and your own position to ideas frequently, because it's this amorphous, constantly evolving thing, is super important, especially after the last 4 years that we all collectively experienced under a somewhat fascist regime, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, an extension of the capitalist regime.
Can I say something real quick?
You can say as much as you like.
Well, because so this is an interesting thing that I kind of do want to talk about sometimes. Bandino said that a lot of immigrants fall into this anti-socialist ideology, and this is true, and I find it super fascinating. I think so. Like, there's a couple. So I can only really speak to my experience. So, like, the first thing is that when I came to America, or I was born in America, my family came to America, and when I was born, a big part of that was, they didn't really want to speak Spanish in the house. It was sort of like we got in, and like we're going to be protected now under this system. So it's like, let's close the door behind us. So. I know, for me, I know this isn't. I'm not going to generalize for like the immigrant experience at all. But for me personally, like it definitely was a thing, and it was a point of contention in my household, and because my mom didn't really like. She was like very much against that. I think just influenced because she grew up in New York in the '80s, and so she when she was like 18, 19, so she was exposed to a lot more than my grandparents, who were more or less acting out of like a post-traumatic situation of leaving their families and stuff like that. And another strange thing with Cuba in particular is the Cuban Missile Crisis. They hold, like, a lot of generational Cubans will hold, they're still kind of like anti-democrat just because of that, because of JFK.
Yeah.
And the way that Cuba was used as like a pawn, the country was used as a pawn between. So it's, when we start looking at like historical narratives outside of America and how like other countries relate to these ideas, I think it's pretty fascinating. But yeah, that's definitely something that was troubling growing up and trying to establish a relationship to it. like kind of just implicitly thinking that republicanism stood for, was like anti people of color, like, because it always felt that way. But then I have my grandfather being, trying to be this big Reagan lover. So it was a strange paradox. But yeah, no, I just wanted to address that thing that Bandino said in the comments.
Oh, good. So, wow. How do we describe what's fair? Is it fair to describe this as a bumpy, non-linear pathway to leftism or towards leftism? Towards the show?
I mean, I was never like, I never went through like a libertarian phase or anything like that. I always like, it was always very clear to me that there was political agendas that were pro people, and there were political agendas that were anti people, and often the anti people agendas were fueled by this myth of, American entitlement, American opportunity, manifest destiny. You have, I always say that America is sort of founded on these two diametrically opposed ideologies. And one is the sort of the Jeffersonian New Republic, manifest destiny, seize and conquer, the oil tycoons, that sort of thing. And then also the Jacques Rousseau general will, arguably the foundation of American social, like the ideology of American socialism, which is that we collectively have to satiate the general will or the will of the people to keep a continuity, or just to keep some balance, right? And that's what it's supposed to be. But these are two like ideologues which are contrapositional to one another. So. But that was something I was, so I suppose I've always felt left leaning, but I just didn't, I think not until recently, past couple of years, it became this thing that, you really look in the mirror and you start to ask yourself, what does that mean? What do my political leanings, like, what am I trying to say about myself, Yeah. So calling myself a leftist, and I'm sure as the time you've spent now on Twitch, it's like there's all these gradations of leftism, right? And it's like what normies might consider being on the left is really a kind of a centrist point of view. Like if you look at someone like Biden. So I think it is fascinating because it's like it's this ever evolving thing. So you can't just settle and say, well, like, I voted for Obama 10 years ago, so I'm good. It's like you have to constantly be like looking at yourself and looking at events, and also just using the information that you take in, and reevaluating your viewpoints and your positions relevant and with regard to that. So,
I used to think Bernie Sanders was left, and then I would find out he was barely left of center.
Yeah, but he was a catalyst.
What I now consider to be center. Yeah, but
exactly.
Yes, but he was part of the catalyst. He was part of my pipeline left. As I like to say, he put me on the moving walkway, and eventually I got off that walkway, and I wasn't effectively left. I had to ask myself whether or not capitalism was reformable. At least that's a big part of it. Moving on. So, I want to ask you, looking now, having heard about some of your current projects, having talked about your leftward journey, if you could think about these things in that context and think about perhaps a younger version of yourself, if you could go back in time, or more realistically, there's a younger version of yourself that's watching in the live chat or will be watching the replay. What piece or pieces of advice would you find important to impart if given that opportunity?
Oh, just don't pay for school.
Don't pay it. Don't pay money.
I honestly, straight up, just not, because the education was always there. So I was always big on, I did go through a graduate program, but I was always really big on auditing, and, I came up in New York City. And so it was very easy to email a professor at NYU or Columbia and just sit in on a class for free. Mm-hmm. And I didn't do anything with my degrees. I didn't pursue education. I wanted to be, for a while, I wanted to be a teacher or a professor. Yeah. So I could have just, especially now, it's like you can just go on. like 2006, 2007, I think is when you started seeing some people upload classes to iTunes for free. That was a thing that was starting to happen. And now it's all over the place. So yeah, just don't pay for school. Just get the education, like get the information you need, read, absorb it when you have that hungry young mind. But yeah, I'm not throwing cash in. I would not have thrown cash in the past.
That's so funny. It's because I went to school and I went to school for music education, but the whole time I think I knew I just wanted to make sounds and just have an opportunity to do that. I don't know. Now that I look back on it, 2020, either way, you did not go to school for music. Is that right?
See, yeah. So on the flip side, and that was a strangely conscious decision of mine when I was 18 was I'm not going to go to art school because this is something that I feel is already sacrosanct. And there was a bit of arrogance and also just ignorance in my approach or how I saw it, because later on I did do private lessons with some musicians that I held in really high regard, which is something I do encourage. If you take your instrument seriously, do that, but don't go to because I thought about going to Berkeley, in Boston. So I was like, that'd be cool. Yeah. But the one thing I'll give props to John Mayer for is that all those people who just dropped out, I was like, whatever, you can just find the right teacher. So I thought that at the time, art school would taint my relationship to the instrument, which I don't think is the case. I think that music theory and understanding of music, it's just language. So you're just learning how to be articulate and how to express yourself. So it's you can be articulate and expressive with just a few words, like great poetry. Or blues music, right? Or you can be very verbose and use a lot of language, but that's all music theory is. So I was conscious of that, and I'm happy I didn't dump money into music school, but I spent a lot of money into reading critical theory, which I could have done for free.
So I wouldn't ask, but you got your guitar right there. I almost feel like you're asking me to ask you. Do you want to make some sounds for us? I'd love to for you to fill my ear holes with sounds.
Let me grab the acoustic because this thing is not going to go through the.
Okay. Nice. You take your time over there.
But I got everything. I work from this corner, so it's all.
Okay. Yeah. Looks like
this is my. This is my first guitar, believe it or not. It's a Gibson Gospel.
Oh my God, dude.
It's an old guitar, and it has a headstock break and everything.
Oh my gosh. Old Gibson. Jealous.
Yeah, this will work. All right.
All right, take your time. I'm in no rush.
Little bluesy thing.
Jesus, I wish I learned to play guitar like that. I'm so jealous, dude. You're so good.
Oh, thanks, man.
You make that guitar sing. It sounds great.
I had an uncle who was a really, really good proper blues guitarist.
Yeah.
And he a very disciplined blues guitarist, not like a new sort of new world blues. He was you got to listen to these records. You got to listen to Robert Johnson. You got to listen to this. You got to respect the genealogy of the 145, so to speak. And he was really stingy with his knowledge. He wouldn't let me play any of his guitars or anything like that. So he was kind of a jerk in retrospect. But that said, he when I was 12, he showed me a 12 bar and a B flat blues. So that stuff will forever be home base,
B flat? Well, you should play in first fucking fret, dude. That's where you hang out. That is the worst.
Yeah, well, just a real quick aside, most stuff before the 60s was in B flat. It's concert tuning, B flat, E flat, or F. So stuff didn't really you didn't see things start to be in E until the 60s, because E is like, it's a guitar tuning.
Yeah.
But like saxophones, everything. I mean, yeah. So it's like a lot of stuff was written in flats and anti-guitar keys before.
And they wouldn't tune their guitars up, huh? They would. Right. That would.
Well, Jimi Hendrix does a lot of stuff in E flat. So there is like some crossover stuff that you'll see that's in E flat. So early rock and roll.
He would go down a half step.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, for sure.
Dude, cool. Oh my God, that was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for playing that for us and Sharon. I feel like I owe you money. Awesome. So this is going to bring us now to the Leftist Inquisition questionnaire. It's a lot of fun. Everyone loves this. I may have sent you a slightly different version, but we'll roll with whatever I got right here, and we'll do the thing. Here we go. Leftist Inquisition. Starting off. So, Justin, what's your favorite word?
Can I use like a non-English word?
Yeah, absolutely.
Duende, which is this. It's so Duende. If you look it up, two things will come up. One is what I'm going to talk about, which is how it relates to flamenco, and the second is like a troll-like creature, this like mythological, which I think that there is some kind of crossover in the etymology, but I'm not quite sure what it is. But anyways, what it means is when the spirit of art takes you over. Of creativity. So it's like when you're performing so it refers specifically to a phenomena that it happens in flamenco music. But I think it's applicable universally to all sorts of things, which when you're, and it's important to me too, from an aesthetic point of view, because the thing I was fascinated by when I was in college and studying philosophy was this thing called phenomenology, which is literally like the study of phenomena, of experiential things, and how your experience and how being in the moment actually, it's like a feedback loop that informs you. So it's the opposite of like Descartes, I think, therefore I am, which is just like an isolated, box over the world. And I think too often we view the world as like isolated, dehumanized, what's the thing that people always say, like the God's viewpoint sort of thing, right? We're immersed creatures. So it's like we're constantly reacting and engaging with our environment. And as a performer, I know you know this too, it's like if you're performing to a dead room, it's extraordinarily different than when you're performing to a live room. So the mood actually will solicit and facilitate a certain type of performance from you. And I think the same is true with education, with politics. I'm just trying to draw that kind of like analog between why I think aesthetics is important when we're talking about politics and we're talking about education, because so much is performative, so much is aesthetics, so much is a kind of like active, art and that's happening in real time, kind of like what Plato would talk about. And it doesn't, when we say performative, it doesn't have to be a bad thing. It just means, we can use the fact that we are ourselves aesthetic creatures to kind of like to our benefit, to communicate better, right? And I think that so Duende refers to when you're sort of possessed in the moment by whatever the spirit of the music, the spirit of a moment, of whatever it may be. And that's my favorite word, because that's the thing that I think that all performers and musicians and artists strive to kind of enter the headspace of. When we're not being these cognitive creatures, we're just sort of like sailing in the mood of the thing that's happening.
Maybe is it unfair to ask you to try to translate it?
I think it literally means like, it's like a possession. Like, I think it's like being, but like in a good way, it's like you're being taken over by the spirit, like the spirit. So that's why I think there is some kind of analog between it being like this troll-like being. Like, I think there's a mythology aspect to it, but it's I guess like, I guess the closest thing in English would be like flow. I was thinking groove. I was thinking vibe. Yeah. No, like all those things are.
Possess seems to. I think it's slightly different. It's definitely different flavor on that. Well, because I think that at least in the language, it's like the idea is that it is outside of you. It's this thing you're participating in, and it's sort of like I guess you ever see the movie what is it, Soul, the Pixar movie? Yeah.
You know how he goes to the place, and he's floating. That's the Duende like experience, you know. You're not really like, you're not driving the car anymore. It's just it's happening.
So no duality. Does it speak to a lack of duality? Is that what we're speaking to here?
Yeah, I guess when you're totally immersed and the instrument or you're just an extension, you know, it's an extension of you.
Cool. So when they say, Dan, you're lazy, and I say, no, we're lazy. You get it. You get it. Yeah. We're lazy, comrade. Okay. Next question, and I'll learn to put these up on the screen eventually. What's your least favorite word?
Oh, God.
God. Why God?
It's a bad word.
It's like a bad word.
It's the source of a lot of strife. Feuerbach, the German, early German, proto Freud person, said that God was all the things that we feel like we can't achieve as human beings put into one box. And I think that to a degree, some of that is true, and it creates this negative subtractive relationship to the human experience and our capacity to do things. And also it's like it segregates us from ourselves, you know, thinking that there's this thing that we're not, you know, whether it be like a Western Judeo-Christian perspective on God, which is that like there's this lack of purity in the soul that we're trying to strip away, or even like this, you know, like Plato and Socrates, they talked about like you have to achieve the philosopher's mind, you have to like rid yourself of corporeality, of the bodily pleasures and your embeddedness to a carnal world, a world of pleasures and desires. And I think it does a disservice to us psychologically and how we think about ourselves and our ability to achieve things. So yeah, I don't think God's a good word. And it also it gives us this like, it's like we immediately, no matter, because words are, I think that words exist to communicate, and like because I think arguing is degenerative and it doesn't really, so it's like whether something means what it means in like Webster's dictionary, it's like, it's all about the message it communicates. And I think God communicates either it's like something that's scary, something that's suppressive or repressive, or it or it's just confusing. So I don't think it's a good word.
God, fine. Oh my gosh, I don't know. I don't usually do that. I'm sorry. I'm an asshole, Justin. Justin, next up, what is your favorite vice or guilty pleasure?
Oh, that's a tough one. Geez. Probably watching those like late night, I watch them late at night, but those like videos of just people like touring food, like what is it called? Like the food. There's this one dude, like he's like Yummy Boy or some shit like that, something stupid, and he just goes to like Korean food carts. Yeah, and it's just like I just watch that forever. That's like my ASMR to go to bed.
It's honestly really great content, and it's good for me because it's sort of like I can put it on and the content just makes itself. My favorite is the girl that eats the food and they show her eating it and it sort of like zooms up to her face and she goes like, yeah, and she's like smiling while she's eating it. I'm losing my shit every time. And sometimes she'd go, and I'm like, I'm dead inside. Hilarious.
I could watch people fry like rice cakes for hours. It's really kind of strange, but actually, I guess that's it.
That is some of my favorite shit, dude. Do you ever see yourself doing a show like that? You should do that.
I mean, I cook a lot. Cooking's, like when I left school and like when I was doing in the intern before I went full time with music was like a lot of people. I worked in the food industry, so I worked as a server, as a bartender for a bunch of years. I also worked as a line cook. I love and I was also taught how to cook from my grandmother. So it's like when you're taught by like a immigrant like grandma, you know how to throw down like some dishes.
Much respect, dude. In terms of sound or a noise, what is one that you love?
I guess there's a couple. The first thing that came to mind is just that, and probably because we were just talking about food, but like that sizzle, that shh, when something like hits a hot pan.
Oh yeah,
that's a really satisfying sound.
Dude, that's how TGI Fridays gets you to get their like their skillets. They know they're playing you. They're like, your ear goes, oh, that sounds good. Like that sounds like it's nice and hot and has good texture.
Another one, I guess the sound of a chord, like an open, like Pete Townsend open E chord, just ringing.
Just an E chord?
Yeah, just a big.
Is it a specific, just first position E chord?
Yeah,
right
like
down there
through distorted amp. Yeah, just.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Pete Townsend E chord. That is a very specific E chord. All right. How about this then? A sound or noise that you hate or intensely dislike.
Oh, like a PA feedbacking into itself.
Oh my gosh. Someone's got to lose their job. Someone's fired.
You know what I'm talking about? I mean, that's like, you never see it coming and it destroys you. It's the worst sound ever.
It like wrecks your soul, and you're trying to like wind up to like knock people's asses off their seats, and you're like, oh.
It's always in sound check. It's always at the worst time.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you're absolutely right about that one. No, literally, no one likes that sound, but you're right. That is a good sound to hate. How about your favorite curse word? And I'll have to insist, no slurs.
Yeah.
I don't want to get banned.
I think probably the first one I thought I was allowed to say, which is damn it. I remember asking my mom. Yeah, I was like, Mom, can I say like damn it? Is that okay? And I went around that whole day and I was just damning things. I was literally like I was damning like plants in the backyard. And I think I like damn it because it's like it's a very like the word it means what it means. It means damn that thing. Like that thing is cursed.
That's
so it's like we use a lot of curse words sometimes that really don't make any sense when you break down the semantic structure of the sentence. Yeah. I mean, fuck's a great word because it has so many uses.
Somehow
you could use it so many, but damn it is really nice, and it's it's close to my heart because I used it as a kid.
I like how you're like you picked your battle. You're like, I'm going to pick this one. Let's go with damn it. I think I can get away with damn it. Can I use damn it? And I can imagine whoever it was deciding to like let you get away with it.
Like it was a soft one, yeah.
Yeah, right. It wasn't too aggressive. It's not like you'd be like, "Hey, Mom, can I say cunt?"
But then they said I can't do it anymore because I was literally damning everything.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, I got carried away.
Oh man! All right, you let it get away with you. You flew a little too close to the sun. Who was one of the first people to push you left?
I guess I guess like we were saying earlier, like probably Bernie. Okay. For what it's worth, like it just he was the first figure that was like, oh, this guy seems like he's outside of what's happening. Mm-hmm. Like he's not part of this machine necessarily. And it got me thinking more about, and then probably AOC, like in a big way, just because she was, there's a pizzazz there, and it seemed, it's exciting to see someone just like kind of like throw a wrench at the system or ostensibly do so.
Do I keep calling you Anthony? Am I? All right. So Justin, how about leftists that are currently inspiring you?
There's a streamer there's the streamer by the name of Mintner36.
Oh yeah, Mintner. Also another musician.
Yeah, I think what Mintner's doing with music, with education, the way that he kind of, the way that they kind of wear their like just everything on their sleeve. I have a lot of respect for Mintner and what they're doing. So yeah, so I try to definitely inspiring and inspiring for me as a musician and as someone who would like to do more education on this platform. So yeah.
Fantastic. That's beautiful.
That's who's inspiring me.
We love Mintnerd, friend of the channel. We'll have to, maybe you can help facilitate getting Mintnerd on sometime soon. I bet people would love to hear from Mintnerd. Excellent. A couple more here. So, Justin, if you were reincarnated as some other, I don't know, plant or animal, what would it be?
Are you familiar with so there's this complex of trees. I think it's the oldest complex of trees on the world, Pando in Utah. It's like volcanic aspect trees. I think that they're like 80,000 years old.
Okay.
I just think that would be dope. Just hang. I mean, first of all, I think trees are intelligent.
Yeah.
And if you could hang around with a collective of trees that have 80,000 years of wisdom, that'd be pretty sick. It just keeps regenerating. It's just this, massively old complex of trees. And it presents as, multiple trees, but it's really a singularity.
Okay. That sounds fascinating. Let's see if I can real quickly pull up a...
Yeah, I think it's called Pando in Utah.
Do they look like these guys?
Yep, that's it.
So no, I see a bunch of trees. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's it. It looks like it presents as a bunch of trees, but it's one tree.
Yeah. No, but that's a bunch of trees, though. What's the difference? That's the thing. I used to know the difference, but I don't get it. Like, how can my brain understand that that's more than one tree?
And being part of a giant...
That's only one tree. What?
Yeah, being part of a giant tree complex that's really one and presents as many. It's like the ultimate communist thing.
Wait, isn't it just like tall grass? Pretty
it's
tall
just,
woody grass?
The root system is connected.
I hate this, dude. I'm done with this. I don't think science is true. They're just making it up. You're clearly making this up. No, that's beautiful. And absolutely fascinating as well. Yeah. Wow. I learned something. I love trees. You ever been there or no?
I have not been there.
Yeah. Well,
I saw a couple old trees. The oldest trees I saw were in Redwoods in California.
Baby, I love the Redwoods. Love them.
And and camping in the Redwoods. I suggest anyone to. So when I went to California for the first time, I'm an East Coaster. Okay. When I went to California for the first time, we rented a car and we just went from San Diego all the way up to Portland, Oregon, and we camped the whole way. And I think that's the best way to do the West Coast. And because you can camp in Big Sur, you can camp in the Redwoods. I mean, when you camp in the Redwoods, I think parts of Star Wars or Jurassic Park, or maybe both were filmed in the Redwoods, just because these trees are insane. I mean, they're 2,000, 3,000 years old. They're gigantic. There's banana slugs, which are these giant yellow. It's really, and the fog is thick and it comes to your waist. So you really feel like you're in a different planet. So I do suggest that trip to anyone. It's inexpensive, relatively speaking, if you're not staying at hotels and stuff, you're just camping and the weather's perfect. So it's a really beautiful trip.
I can second that very well. So lastly, my final question for you, Justin, if heaven and God exist, what would you like to hear them say when you arrive at your version of the pearly gates?
I mean, if they were to, it'd be nice if you showed up and they were like, hey, good job, you did it. But I really, the way I always imagined heaven to be like was just, if there were to be, it would be like just like a Kafka nightmare in which it's just like the DMT. And like you just get this memo from God, that says like he can't be here right now, but you can go over there in that waiting room for a bit. I just see it as this kind of very like depressive DMV like space, and people are just like hanging out. Yeah. So that's what I think. I think I would just be approached by an agent of God, a representative of God, and that's it.
Yeah, I like that one. Hey, Justin, that concludes my portion of the Leftist Inquisition, but that doesn't necessarily conclude the questions. What I'd like to give you the opportunity is feel free to ask me some questions. I have to have a hard stop in just about 5 minutes to give myself a time to breathe before my next interview. But what do you think?
Yeah, for sure. I guess, I mean, you've probably spoken about this before on your platform, but I'm not sure what the answer is. So when you say you're a new leftist. Yeah. So when I interpret that, so I have two ideas in my head when I hear that. Either like you were this staunch conservative who moved to leftism, or you were just someone who was just unaware of like what that world entailed, which I think is a lot of people. Like I was never a conservative or a Republican, but I was also never someone who identified as a leftist until I just had more information. So I guess that's my question to you is like, what do you mean by that when you say I'm a new leftist?
So I mean that in an objective sense, in the sense that I'm recently convinced that anti-capitalism cannot be reformed and that we need to move towards socialism and then communism. So in that sense, yes, I didn't know what that meant. Like I didn't really know what leftist meant. I didn't really ask myself, what does it mean to be a leftist? And I didn't know how to, even if I asked it, I might not have known how to go about answering the question for myself. So it was recently that I hopped online and I just started talking about politics. I don't think at the time I referred to myself as a leftist. I definitely considered myself liberal. Like I would have considered myself progressive, definitely progressive. So
that's what we would say, right? Yeah.
Right. So I'm not sure if actually I started using leftist incorrectly and people are like, well, do you think this? And I'm like, wait, what's that? And I can't remember if it was like that or if it just came more naturally and then I eventually identified as leftist. But I do believe it was recently, I know it was recently that, while streaming, like my channel's very much been like watching me slide to the left in the sense that I've been convinced more and more, like I mentioned, we should move towards socialism. And then I was actually convinced as well that we should move towards a communism. A couple of things along the way convinced me of that. And again, like I mentioned, being convinced that capitalism is the problem that was effectively being pointed at by all these different things that I'd looked at in my life, by all these different people, the John Stewarts, the John Olivers, the different political thinkers, this guy, the Bernie Sanders, as well, and the AOCs, and maybe they do explicitly say it, but I just wasn't listening. But again, like it just seems as though everything we look at is sort of pointing at symptoms of the problem, but that sometimes they sort of fail to point directly at it. And I just effectively had to ask myself, is capitalism the problem? And once I was convinced of that, it was like, can it be fixed? Can it be reformed with soc dem reforms, such as, what Bernie Sanders and electoralism, who we might consider as leftists participating in electoralism, what they're currently fighting for. So I had to be convinced that you could go farther left, and it just sort of doesn't represent itself in electoralism currently. So I had to break out of the context that I believed in, which is that I grew up with relatively conservative parents, nothing like QAnon or anything like that, but they point at the Bernie Sanders and they sort of like they can't imagine going any farther left. But I can now. I've sort of like given myself that space and time to think about it, and eventually ask myself, can capitalism be fixed? No, I don't believe so anymore. Do we need to move towards something else? Yes, I believe so, and I do believe a revolution of some sort is necessary. I don't know what that's going to look like. I have so much to learn. I want to defer to. I most often want to defer to, leftists who are more experienced and who have more important voices to me than I do as a, cis straight white guy. So that's why I'm opening up my channel to as many voices as possible at this point. Yeah, I don't know. That's sort of a winding way of answering your question.
No, right on, Dan. I mean, it's a continuous conversation, and and we're all still learning. And I agree with you 100%. I mean, capitalism, as we understand it in the modern context, is predicated upon privilege. Like the capitalism that was birthed of the 18th century was one birth of this concept of rationalism that sort of presupposed this idea that came out of both privilege out of wealth and privilege in ideology is this kind of like post-enlightenment phenomena that the collective sort of colonial European mindset of the time were the ones that were reasonable enough to just sort of live here and just shimmy in the wealth. And then that was just going to be it. And we were going to be okay. And it ignored, everything. It ignored indigenous people. It ignored just the violence that these systems were built upon. Yes. And that ended up just, becoming America, in a lot of ways. And so we're built on this system of thinking, which is inherently, exclusive and othering and damaging and violent to other people. So it doesn't work, and it has to be, dismantled. So I agree with you, and I think stuff like this, having these conversations, what we're doing right now is a path towards finding ways to communicate and have self-understanding, and also give others understanding of a path forward. So I applaud you, sir.
Hey, that's nice of you. Thank you for
thing.
that. Thank you very much, Justin. So I am going to have to cut you cut this. I don't know if short. It feels like it's short because I feel like I'd love to continue the conversation with you. We'll have to catch up with you sometime again soon. All right. All right.
Right on,
Justin, thank you very much for stopping by. It was an honor to get to learn from you, to get to hear your story, and hear some advice that perhaps we could pass down. Thank you very much for your time, Justin. We'll talk to you next time. Love your face. Peace now.
Later.
All right. Later, Gator. All right. That was Justin. Hey, YouTube. You're watching a clip from my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/iDanSimpson, where you can follow for free and subscribe for only $5 a month. Thanks for watching.